I just want to read a little bit and discuss something from this book, The Holy Sacrifice of the Mass. The Church teaches that there is a continuity with the Mass, that it was pre and post Vatican II. And I just wanted to delve into one aspect of the Mass, which was silence. And so I just want to talk about something here. So just bear with me a second. The Holy Sacrifice of the Mass, the centre of Catholic worship. It yet remains for us to explain, at least briefly, the central position and fundamental signification pertaining to the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass in the Catholic Church. Instituted for the salvation of souls. Hence, it will be seen that it is of vital importance for the very life and operation of the Church. The Catholic Church is a great institute of salvation founded by Jesus for the entire world and for all time. As such, she has the subliminal mission and task to continue and accomplish throughout all ages the work of Christ's redemption for the conversion and salvation of souls. God willed that all men, by means of the Church and in the Church, should receive heavenly light and life, and come to the knowledge of truth and be saved. 1 Timothy 2:4. For this purpose the Lord is and remains with his Church. In her he lives and acts all days until the end of the world. The sacramental truth and reality of the God-man continues always his mediatorship on earth by the ministry of his Church. As he redeemed mankind, especially by the bloody sacrifice of the cross, he also carries out the work of redemption in his Church, chiefly by the unbloody sacrifice of the altar, since it is essential representation and mystical renewal of the world's redeeming sacrifice of the cross. This the Church concisely and appropriately expresses when it says of the Mass, Quodies uius hostiae commemoratio celebrator opus nostre redemptionis exergetur. That is, as often as this memorial sacrifice is celebrated, the work of redemption is performed. These simple words not merely express that by the sacrifice, the fruits of the sacrifice of the cross are bestowed on men in regard to the redemption taking subjectively, but they also declare that all features of the work of redemption, taking in its objective sense, are mystically renewed and represented on the altar. I could go on. I suppose I want to emphasize a point here, and Cardinal Sarah, he talks about it as well. I'll just bring it up here. Today, some priests treat the Eucharist with the utmost contempt. They see the Mass as a talkative banquet where Christians faithful to the teaching of Christ, divorced and remarried persons, men and women in adulterous situation, unbaptized tourists who partake in the Eucharistic celebrations of large and anonymous crowds can indiscriminately have access to the body and blood of Christ. The Church must examine with urgency the ecclesial and pastoral appropriateness of these immense Eucharistic celebrations made up of thousands and thousands of participants. There is a great danger of transforming the Eucharist, the great mystery of faith, into a vulgar country fair of desecrating the body and precious blood of Christ. And if you buy this book, Silence, The Power of Silence by Cardinal Sarah, you understand the wealth, the depth, the mystical, as it says here, and I just get the quote again. Taken in its objective sense, the Mass is mystically renewed and represented on the altar. The crucifixion of Christ is mystically renewed and represented on the altar. There's some I have tried to meditate as much as I can on the Mass. When I go to the Mass, I try and meditate even further and go in further in silence. And the more you go into meditation in the Mass, when I go to both Masses, it pains me to promote the traditional Latin Mass against what the Pope has said is no longer the ordinary rite of the Church. It's no longer the extraordinary rite of the Church. There's only one unique celebration of the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass, which is the Novus Ordo. It pains me to go against bishops, priests, and laity who don't see the meditation that I have had in the traditional Latin Mass. I don't promote the traditional Latin Mass because I have some sense of superiority, or because we are somehow more educated or more holy or anything like that. The reason why I promote the traditional Latin Mass, the fruit of my meditation on the Eucharist going to both Masses, is one, the traditional Latin Mass brings me to Calvary, brings me to be physically in front of Christ in Calvary. I am placed in front of Christ's crucified body at Calvary. And not only just to be in front of Christ's body, but to be there at a specific moment in time of his crucifixion. The moment that he says, Tetelestai, or Ho Mashalam, or Mashalam, it's accomplished, it's finished. When Christ gives up his soul, it's that specific moment at Calvary that you're placed into in silence. There's a salvific, silence can be horrific for some people if there's nothing there. I mean, you can be left in silence and feel nothing. Or you can be in silence, participating in prayer and having a conversation that's actually full of emotion, of prayer. It's hard to explain. It's hard to explain the silence of Calvary. But that silence of Calvary you will encounter in the traditional Latin Mass. And if you want to understand the Mass better, I'm going to set you a challenge. Go to 100 traditional Latin Masses. Get a breviary, a missal, the missal which will, so that you can follow the Mass. You can also get it on your phone. So if you don't want to spend money, you can get it on your phone, or you can print it out so that you have it. Get a missal, follow the Mass, go to 100 traditional Latin Masses and enter into that mystery, that silence of Calvary, so that you're there in front of Christ at the moment that he says, it is accomplished, it is finished, tetelestai. The moment that Christ gives up his, because it's hard to actually explain that mystical vision of encountering Christ's body at the Mass, of actually seeing Christ's body at the Mass, of actually seeing him at Calvary at the Mass. It's profoundly shocking. It's profoundly, it's hard to explain. But we have lost something incredibly precious in what we have done to the holy sacrifice of the Mass in the last 50 years. Because we've eclipsed the encounter with Christ in the sacrifice of the Mass. We've eclipsed a soul's ability to encounter Christ at Calvary. And to let him transform your life. To let Christ into your soul to transform your life. And I would ask people, those that can renew the Eucharist, because I can't, I'm not a priest. I'm just meditating on both Masses, going to both Masses. I'm going to the Novus Ordo, and I'm seeing it celebrated as, I'm seeing a celebration. You all know how it's celebrated. You all know how the Novus Ordo is celebrated. They're 98% of Catholics, or 99% of Catholics who do go to the Novus Ordo in Ireland, don't kneel or make any form of reverence when receiving the Eucharist. And that's a whole teaching for our children, for the next generation, so that we show them how we bend the knee to our King. We see what we've done to the Novus Ordo. And even the way we receive communion in the Novus Ordo. This wasn't designed by saints. These men that designed that, they didn't have that intimate, mystical relationship with Christ, because they would never have designed the Novus Ordo in that way. If you meditate on how you receive the communion in the Novus Ordo, which is not just kneeling on the tongue, but it's also the whole preparation. In the traditional Latin Mass, Christ feeds you. He doesn't ask you to respond to him, to say amen even, because his body, blood, soul and divinity is there. And you're just led into that Eucharistic presence in a more profound way. And it pains me to say all of this. People think, oh, your Taylor Marshall talks all about the traditional Latin Mass, and you're doing the same thing. And it's, I mean, Taylor Marshall is right in the sense that the traditional, it doesn't depend on me what I think of the traditional Latin Mass. It doesn't depend on me. It's not me. It was there for hundreds and hundreds of years. It fostered the mystical life of so many saints. And if you want to experience that, and then do the meditation of the traditional Latin Mass. Do the meditation of the power of silence in the traditional Latin Mass, because the priest doesn't need to add anything to it. If you go to a low Mass, like I went yesterday to a low Mass, traditional Latin Mass, a low Mass, which in other languages they don't call it low Mass, they would just call it Missa detta. The priest just prays the Mass. He just does the rite of the Mass. He doesn't add anything to it or subtract anything. He simply does it. And if you listen, if you enter into that mystery of what the priest is praying, you know, you're left in front of Calvary, because he doesn't look at us. He's not there for us. We're drawn into the mystery of Calvary, of encountering Christ. And then Christ is drawing us with him. He's drawing us. It's like this incredible pull. And that's the incredible sadness. There's nothing more sad for me as a Catholic, as a Roman Catholic, than to see what we have done to the Mass and to the Eucharist. Because souls are not able, or maybe there are, I don't know. I suppose I'm just throwing out a reflection of my meditation. Really, this is my reflection. I'm not casting judgment on people. I'm not here to divide the church. I am just drawn to that encounter at Calvary, at traditional Latin Mass. That's simply it. And I'm confounded by what I'm encountering at being placed physically at the foot of Christ at the cross. At a specific moment of his crucifixion, when, you know, he says tetelestai, when he's giving up his body. Do you know what? At the most profound moment, he gave up. He was offered up to the Father. And so, like, if you want to journey on the most profound and silent encounter with Christ, go to traditional Latin Mass with that spirit. Obviously, we don't want to divide the church. We don't want to go against priests or bishops or the Pope or Second Vatican Council. But Second Vatican Council did not ask us to destroy the holy sacrifice of the Mass, to destroy that mystical encounter with Christ in the Eucharist in silence. In silence. Everything in the traditional Latin Mass draws you into that mystical encounter with Christ. If you're going there, if you're meditating, if you're humble and you're getting the graces from confession, and you want to know Christ more, he draws you into it in the most incredible way. It's hard to explain. I'm not the greatest person, but there is power. There is power. There is a power of silence, and there's a power of a priest leading us to Calvary. I don't know how. So, this is my own reflection. And, it's painful to see. It's painful to see what we've done to the holy sacrifice of the Mass. It becomes a performance. And you wonder, what is the point in having a rite at all, if we're just going to change it and move it around and create our own stuff and lead people away from Calvary, lead people away from silence, lead people away from the encounter with Christ. We've eclipsed the Eucharist. Well, that's the painful thing for me, because I don't get any joy out of doing what I'm doing, because I feel alone. I feel in the Irish Church that I'm the crazy one. I'm the mad one that's promoting this. It doesn't make sense. Robert, why haven't you moved on? Look, this is Pope Francis has said this. Are you more holy than the Pope? And all of these things that I think about, am I more holy? No, I'm not. But how can you deny the encounter with Christ in silence at the traditional Latin Mass? How can anyone deny me that experience? I will go to my grave defending that. I will go to my grave defending the encounter with Christ and I'm the most broken person you can imagine on so many levels. But I would be far worse if I didn't have the relationship with Christ that I have, that draws me out of so many issues in my life and keeps drawing me towards his sacred heart. I don't know what is going on in the church, but I do know that the friendship I have with Christ, the encounter with Christ, is so real. I can't deny it. I can't deny being physically placed in front of Christ at Calvary at every Mass, even in the Novus Ordo. I will make the effort to place myself there, but it's so much difficult. It's like being held back from Calvary. It's frustrating in prayer. It's not the same. It's simply not the same. The two Masses are simply not the same. I don't know why Ecclesia Dei communities say that, we accept the Novus Ordo. They're not the same. I mean, on a level of prayer, on a level of meditation, on a level of encounter with Christ, they're not the same. You can't say it. One has been hastily concocted in a couple of years, disregarding hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of tradition and lived experience. One has hastily been concocted and has destroyed the faith of millions of Catholics. Destroyed the life of prayer of millions of Catholics. It doesn't foster unity with Christ. It simply doesn't. Look at the church. Look at the landscape. Look and see what has happened to the sacred. We destroyed the power of silence. What do we end up with? The power of noise, the power of confusion, the power of sin. Prayer is the greatest proof of God's existence. We'll go to my grave saying that. Prayer is the greatest proof of God's existence. And there are elements to that prayer that need to be there for prayer to have fruits. And one of them is silence. And that was there. It was the most perfect prayer of the church, the sacrifice of the Mass, which in the Roman Rite had boundless amounts of silence. It just worked. I don't know why. But let's see. Pray for the church. This video is pre-recorded, and you'll be listening to this. I'll be traveling to Medjugorje. I know there's lots of divided opinion on this channel about Medjugorje. I'm being drawn there, literally drawn there. It's not my decision to go there. I've been drawn there, been told to go there. So I'm going there. I don't know why. So pray for the world, pray for the church. Peace, peace, peace. Mir. That's what's coming to me in prayer. And just pray for peace in this time. Pray that the church returns to Christ, returns to the Eucharist. It's critical we return to the Eucharist. Not as a sign of superiority. I'm no better than anyone else. Those of us who go to traditional Latin Mass, we're not superior. It's about Christ. It's about encountering Christ in the Eucharist. I don't know how. I can't explain this. And that's simply it. Anyway, pray for me. God bless. Take care.